Picture stepping outside your home and seeing not a garden that needs to be replanted every year, but trees steadily producing food season after season. No scrambling to find seeds or pressure to catch the right planting window. No reliance on store shelves. Just living sources of nourishment that become more productive with time. For most of human history, survival wasn't built solely on annual crops. It depended on trees, reliable, long-lasting food sources that sustained families through wars, famine, economic hardship, and harsh winters. These were plants that required little attention, yet continued to produce even when people had limited time or energy. Annual vegetables certainly have their role, but trees represent true stability. Today, you'll learn about 8 food-producing trees capable of supporting a family for decades. These are not rare or luxury plants. They are durable, proven, calorie-rich species that can turn land into a dependable food system. Once established, they don't just produce once. They keep feeding you year after year. Let's begin. 1. Apple tree. If one tree truly represents long-term food security, it's the apple tree. Apples are more than just fruit. They function as a complete system. For centuries, they were a cornerstone of survival across Europe, Asia, and North America, long before refrigeration or global supply chains existed. Entire communities depended on apples because they solved a fundamental challenge: preserving food through winter. Fresh apples could be stored for months in cool environments like root cellars. Even bruised or overripe fruit was never wasted. It could be dried, cooked, fermented, or turned into vinegar. Every part had a use. Growing an apple tree requires patience. In its early years, it focuses on building strong roots, a stable trunk, and well-structured branches instead of producing heavy crops. This slow development is what makes it so reliable later. Once mature, an apple tree becomes incredibly productive. A single healthy tree can produce hundreds of pounds of fruit in a single season, far more than a family can eat fresh. That excess becomes a major advantage, allowing you to preserve food, trade it, feed animals, or store it for later use. One of the apple's greatest strengths is its versatility. It can be eaten fresh, baked, boiled, dried, fermented, or pressed. Apples can become cider, vinegar, sauces, fruit leather, pies, or long-lasting snacks. In difficult times, food that can be used in many different ways becomes especially valuable. From a growing standpoint, apple trees are highly adaptable. There are varieties suited for cold climates, hot and humid regions, dry environments, and short growing seasons. Some tolerate frost well, while others are bred for disease resistance and require minimal care once established. Nutritionally, apples offer more than just natural sugars. They provide fiber for digestion, vitamin C for immune support, and beneficial plant compounds that help regulate inflammation. While they are not a complete food on their own, they serve as an excellent foundation alongside grains, nuts, and legumes. But the true strength of an apple tree is its consistency. Once planted and established, it doesn't need replanting. It doesn't depend on yearly seed supplies. It isn't affected by supply chain issues or rising costs. It simply produces, steadily, reliably, and on its own schedule. That kind of dependability is incredibly valuable, especially in uncertain times. 2. Walnut tree. Walnut trees are the definition of a long-term investment. They don't grow quickly and they don't deliver immediate rewards. In their early years, they develop quietly without demanding much attention. But over time, they grow into large, powerful trees that provide significant value. Walnuts are among the most nutrient-dense foods you can harvest from a tree. They are rich in healthy fats, especially omega-3 fatty acids, as well as protein, fiber, magnesium, manganese, and antioxidants. In survival situations, fat becomes essential. Without enough fat, energy levels drop, mental clarity declines, and the body struggles to function properly. Fat is a critical source of long-lasting energy, and walnuts provide it naturally. A mature walnut tree can produce thousands of nuts each year. Each nut is protected by a shell, preserving a compact, calorie-dense food source that can be stored for long periods. When kept in cool, dry conditions, walnuts can last for years, especially when stored in their shells. They can be eaten raw, roasted, ground into flour, or pressed into oil. Walnut oil itself is valuable not only as food, but also for preservation and other traditional uses. Beyond nutrition, walnut trees offer additional benefits. Their wood is highly prized. strong, durable, and valuable for construction or craftsmanship. In a self-reliant system, access to quality materials can be just as important as food. They also produce natural compounds like juglone, which suppress the growth of certain nearby plants. While this requires thoughtful garden planning, it can also reduce competition and weed pressure under the tree. Their deep root systems stabilize soil and pull nutrients up from deeper layers, improving the long-term health of the land. They are not fast-growing. It can take years before they reach full productivity. But resilience isn't about speed. It's about longevity, investing in the future, and planting something today that will strengthen your land for decades. Walnut trees represent that philosophy perfectly. They grow tall. They endure changing conditions. They produce quietly. And once mature, they provide a steady yearly supply of dense, stored energy, falling directly from the tree. 3. Mulberry tree. Mulberry trees are some of the most overlooked yet incredibly valuable survival trees you can grow. They grow rapidly. They handle poor or dry soils with ease and naturally resistant to many pests, and produce a surprisingly large amount of fruit. What truly sets mulberries apart is not just their ability to survive, but their ability to thrive with very little care. Unlike many fruit trees that demand regular pruning, fertilizing, spraying, or constant monitoring, mulberries tend to grow freely and independently. Once planted, they develop deep root systems, and within just a few years, they can grow tall and expansive while producing large quantities of fruit. And when harvest time comes, they don't hold back. A mature mulberry tree can produce hundreds of pounds of berries in a single season. Unlike trees that deliver all their fruit at once, mulberries ripen gradually over several weeks, or even longer. This extended harvest window is especially valuable in survival situations, as it spreads out the food supply instead of concentrating it into a short period. The berries themselves are sweet, energy-rich, and highly nutritious. They provide natural sugars for quick energy, fiber to support digestion, vitamin C to strengthen the immune system, iron for healthy blood, and antioxidants that help the body cope with stress. Mulberries are also extremely versatile. They can be eaten fresh, straight from the tree. They can be dried like raisins for long-term storage or be turned into jams, syrups, or sauces. Even be fermented into wine or vinegar. Even the leaves are useful. Historically, they've been used for making tea and as feed for livestock. In some traditions, mulberry leaves are also valued for their medicinal properties, particularly for supporting healthy blood sugar levels and metabolism. From a resilience perspective, mulberry trees are exceptionally tough. They tolerate both heat and cold, grow in clay, sandy, or otherwise poor soils, and require very little watering once established. They don't demand ideal conditions. They reward patience and consistency. Plant a mulberry tree today, and within just a few years, you can have a reliable source of food that continues producing for decades. 4. Pear tree. Pear trees may not attract as much attention as apple trees, but in terms of survival value, they are often even more resilient. Many pear varieties are highly tolerant of cold and naturally resistant to disease. They can handle poor soil conditions, strong winds, and even neglect better than most fruit trees. In fact, on abandoned properties, pear trees are often among the last to survive, quietly continuing to produce fruit year after year without care. This level of durability makes them an excellent choice for long-term planting. Pear trees are also incredibly long-lived. Some historic trees have produced fruit for over 100 years, meaning a single planting can provide food for multiple generations. Very few crops offer such a long-lasting return. Like apples, pears are excellent for storage. Many varieties are picked while still firm and actually improve in flavor over time. When stored properly in cool conditions, they can last for months. Dried pears are dense in calories, lightweight, and easy to store, making them ideal for long-term food reserves. Nutritionally, pears offer fiber, essential minerals, and slow-releasing carbohydrates. They are gentle on the digestive system, which can be especially important during times of dietary stress or limited food variety. Another important advantage is their bloom timing. Pear trees typically flower later than apple trees, which reduces the risk of frost damage to blossoms. This natural timing often results in more consistent harvests year after year. Pear trees are not flashy. They don't produce dramatic early yields or require constant attention. But survival isn't about spectacle, it's about endurance. It favors plants that can handle neglect, recover from mistakes, and continue producing under less than perfect conditions. Pear trees represent this perfectly. Steady, reliable production over time is far more valuable than short bursts of abundance. 5. Fig tree. Fig trees are natural survival specialists, especially in warm climates. They tolerate poor, rocky soils, handle drought conditions well. They begin producing fruit early, often within 2 to 3 years. And under the right conditions, they can produce multiple harvests in a single season. Figs have been cultivated for thousands of years primarily because of their reliability. Unlike many fruit trees that take years to begin producing, fig trees start relatively quickly. Some varieties even produce an early brebe crop on older wood, followed by a main harvest later in the season, providing food more than once per year, which is a major advantage in survival situations. Figs are rich in calories and natural sugars, making them an excellent energy source. They also provide fiber, calcium, potassium, magnesium, and antioxidants. Historically, dried figs were used as travel food, military rations, and winter provisions across regions like the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Dried figs are especially practical. They store well without refrigeration, are compact and portable, and require minimal preparation. Simply slicing and sun-drying them is enough. Fig trees are also easy to propagate. A single cutting placed in moist soil can take root and grow into a new tree. This means one tree can gradually expand into a small orchard without requiring additional investment. They adapt well to different growing conditions, including containers, small gardens, and limited spaces. They respond well to pruning and can remain productive even when kept at a manageable size. They don't require rich soil and frequent watering. They don't demand regular chemical treatments. All they need is sunlight and time. Unlike slower-growing fruit trees, figs begin producing while others are still focused on establishing roots and branches. This makes them one of the fastest ways to move toward a stable, long-term food supply. 6. Olive tree. Olive trees are much more than simple fruit-bearing plants. They are enduring symbols of resilience and survival. For thousands of years across the dry and sun-scorched landscapes of the Mediterranean, olive trees have sustained entire civilizations. When other crops failed due to drought or harsh conditions, olive trees persisted and continued to produce. Olive oil itself has always been more than just food. It has served as fuel, medicine, a form of trade currency, and even a source of light in lamps. A single mature olive tree can produce generous harvests for generations. While the olives themselves are nutritious, it is the oil that elevates them into a true survival resource. Olive oil is calorie-dense, long-lasting, and highly concentrated, a rare combination among plant-based foods. In survival conditions, fat is often the hardest nutrient to obtain. Carbohydrates are relatively easy to grow, and protein can come from legumes or livestock, but fat is much more difficult to secure. Olive trees provide it naturally and reliably. Olives are rich in monounsaturated fats, which help support heart health, provide steady energy, and improve the absorption of other nutrients. They also contain antioxidants that help protect the body from stress and inflammation, especially important during times of physical strain or limited resources. The olive tree itself is legendary for its resilience. It thrives in drought conditions, rocky or alkaline soils, strong winds, intense heat, and long dry summers. Once established, its deep root system allows it to access water far below the surface. It does not require fertile soil or constant care. In fact, it often performs best in environments where many other fruit trees would fail. Some olive trees have lived for hundreds, even thousands of years. Planting one is not just a short-term decision. It's an investment that can benefit multiple generations. Yes, olives must be processed to remove their natural bitterness, and extracting oil requires effort. But in exchange, you gain one of the most valuable survival resources available: a stable, concentrated fat source that can be used for food, medicine, skincare, soap making, and even fuel. Olive trees take time to mature, but once established, they are among the most dependable producers in warm, dry climates. They are not just fruit trees, they are a long-term system of support. 7. Avocado tree. In suitable climates, avocado trees stand out as one of the most nutrient-dense food sources available. Avocados are unlike most fruits. They do not cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, and they are not simply a sweet treat. They are a substantial source of nourishment. Rich, creamy, and packed with healthy fats, they provide sustained energy that many survival diets lack. They are particularly rich in monounsaturated fats that provide long-lasting energy fiber that supports digestive health, potassium, often in higher amounts than bananas' folate and other essential micronutrients. Unlike most fruits, avocados function more like a polnocenny meal rather than a light snack, an important advantage when resources are limited. A mature avocado tree can produce hundreds of fruits each year, hundreds of nutrient-dense servings growing quietly overhead. Since avocados ripen after being picked, you can control when they are ready to eat, spreading out your food supply instead of facing a single overwhelming harvest. Young avocado trees do require some care, including well-drained soil, protection from frost, and consistent watering while their roots are developing. However, once established, they become far more resilient than many people expect. Patience pays off. In survival scenarios, fat is one of the hardest nutrients to secure. Hunting can be unreliable, dairy may not be available, and nut trees take years to mature. Avocados provide a natural solution by converting sunlight, water, and soil into dense, reliable calories year after year. And unlike stored food, they don't spoil while still on the tree. 8. Chestnut tree. If there were a true king among survival trees, the chestnut would be a strong candidate. Chestnuts are not just a snack, they are a staple food. For centuries across Europe and Asia, chestnut trees supported entire populations, especially in regions where grains struggled to grow in rocky or poor soils. They were not considered a luxury, they were a daily necessity. Chestnuts are high in carbohydrates, low in fat, and very filling. Unlike most nuts, which are rich in fats, chestnuts function more like grains or potatoes, providing steady, slow-release energy. Exactly what the body needs during physically demanding conditions or times of scarcity. They can be prepared in many ways: roasted over an open fire, boiled and mashed, dried and ground into flour, added to soups and stews, baked into bread or porridge. Chestnut flour is especially valuable. It stores well, has a naturally sweet taste, and can replace traditional grain flour in many recipes. From a survival perspective, a tree that produces flour is not just useful, it is foundational. A single mature chestnut tree can produce hundreds of pounds of food each year. This is not a small supplement, it is a major food source. Per acre, chestnut trees can provide more calories than many grain crops without the need for annual planting, plowing, or intensive labor. Once established, the tree continues producing with minimal effort. Chestnut trees are long-lived and highly productive once mature. While it may take several years before they reach full output, long-term survival is about planning ahead, not quick results. Plant once and harvest for decades. In addition, chestnut trees contribute to the environment around them. Their fallen leaves enrich the soil, their canopy provides shade, and their root systems stabilize slopes and help prevent erosion. In mountainous or marginal areas, they can transform unproductive land into a reliable food source. Very few trees can deliver such a high-calorie yield with so little ongoing effort. That is why chestnuts were often called the bread tree, because throughout history, bread has always been the foundation of survival.